Okay. So I'm assuming some of you may have fellowshipped earlier today. And if you did, you are familiar with this, the order of service. And so I want to share with everyone today the direction we're taking, what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing a check-in and digitization and welcome. That's what we've been doing for the first 15 minutes. Everybody's getting settled. Then we're going to have our host, Natira, talk about why we're even here and what we're doing. And then I'll talk a bit more about the work that I do with the Texas Freedom Colonies Project and talk about freedom colonies or black settlements here in Washington County. So with that, I will hand it over to Natira.
Perfect. All right. So I want to start by thanking everybody for coming out and sharing your time as well as your energy, okay, and your enthusiasm for this project and this journey that I'm hopeful that we will be on together, okay? So I want to start by just sharing a little bit about what we're planning to do here today, and then I will give just a brief introduction of Dr. Roberts and her team. So you're here today for the Oral Tradition Workshop and Community Archive Drive. So let's talk about what that means. We are in the middle of, the Brenham Heritage Museum is in the middle of undergoing a multi-million-dollar renovation of the building known as the Post Office Building. Okay, just one street over. Many of you are familiar with that post office building. So within the next 1.5 years or so, we are planning to raise funds, and we have an exciting opportunity to reimagine the content that goes within that building, okay? It's no secret that prior to this new renovation, there was not a lot of African American content included in the museum archives and content. So what I want to tell you guys today is that your help is needed and the time is now, okay? This is the window where we have an opportunity to gather photos, stories, objects, artifacts, everything that tells the story of the African American experience here in Washington County. And when I say the African American experience, I don't just mean the firsts or the stories that perhaps you hear the most. I mean the everyday stories, the black businesses that were on Commerce Street, the people who got patents for farm equipment, the ancestors that are in freedom colonies. And don't worry, you'll learn about what freedom colonies are, and you'll learn that we have some right here in Washington County. So I want you guys to be aware that the goal of the African American Content Committee, and those are just a few of us pictured there to the right, the goal is to pull together stories, objects, pictures that represent the Black experience, okay? And we will do our best to ensure that those are showcased in the Post Office Building Museum when that opens in 1.5 years. So that's where we need your help. That's why we're here today. So what we're asking for is your help in helping to gather oral histories. So Dr. Roberts and her team is going to train us on how you gather an oral history, how you do a topic interview with a specific person, whether it's about Pickard High School or whether it's about one of the black businesses, or a number of topics that we could choose. But we want you to get involved and tell a friend, tell the rest of your family, and find ways to help us gather this content. It is not intended to be something that's exclusive. I want to be really clear about that. The goal is to be inclusive and really represent the broad fabric of the African American experience here in Washington County, okay? The only way we can do that is with your help. So this is just one of many events and opportunities, so please share what you have, share photos that that you have, tell friends and family members if they have items that you'd like to share. If there's people that aren't here today, reach out to one of the African American Content Committee members to let us know so that we can call them or go by their homes or get in contact with them to get the objects and photos that we need. Okay, so that is the objective of what we're going to do today. So Dr. Roberts and her team of graduate students is going to walk us through this workshop on how to gather those oral histories so that each of you are equipped and trained and able to go out and conduct those oral history interviews, okay? In addition, as she said, we have this digitization station where folks will help you get any items scanned that you may have today. And this isn't a one-time thing. You can feel free to make an appointment to have this happen here at the museum and bring your objects or pictures that you have. So just one quick thing about Dr. Roberts and her team. I cannot go through her list of qualifications. I'll just say she's well qualified, okay? You can go to her website, the Texas Freedom Colonies Project.com, and you will see her bio. It talks about her degrees and what she's done and where she has made an impact. What I will tell you that drew me to Dr. Roberts and her team is her gift of connecting, okay? We know here, as we sit, that the stories of Black folks here in Brenham and Washington County have value. They mean something to us, okay? It means something to me to hear about the Blue Jays and the Red Sox, a baseball team that my dad played on when he was a kid. That means something to each of us. We all have those kinds of memories. Dr. Roberts has this power of valuing those stories and then somehow connecting them with other resources, other entities, and other people to figure out how to help others see value in them, to be blunt. She just has a way of, helping people realize that our stories do matter and that it's important that we tell them. So that's one of the reasons I want to connect you guys with her. And again, I'll say it, we're trying to expand our African American content, and the people that we need to do this are you. Okay, there's not a team of other people, there's not someone else that's coming to save us. The people that we need, they're right here in the chairs now. It's you to spread the word, to do the work, to provide the pictures, to help, okay? So you are the folks, and as I said before, the time is now.
So we mentioned Texas Freedom Colonies, and there's a lot of different names for the kind of places where my people grew up or where my people came from. I am a 7th generation Texan, and the communities that my family helped start, and probably a lot of your families helped start, are known by different names. They're known as just Black settlements, or freedom colonies, or freedmen's towns, or they're known as all Black towns in Oklahoma. These are all the same places that we started after emancipation. So from 1865 till about 1930, we had a couple to 3 generations of us that started whole places on our own, independent places where we could be safe. We started out in 1870, we only owned about 2% of all the farmland in Texas, and by 1910, we owned 31%. And those accumulation of land, the people who accumulated that land, they accumulated land for a homestead. People allocated or donated land for a church or for a school, for a cemetery, for a lodge. And those became the building blocks and the anchors of these communities. And we want to know about those because we can't know about those places or about those communities and that they existed without knowing about the churches, the schools, the cemeteries, the lodges, the homesteads. And that's what freedom colonies are made up of. And there's some 550 plus freedom colonies in Texas alone. And that number is important because people often think that all the Black people came from the cities, that they went straight from the plantation and ran up to the cities. But we know differently. We know that there's a more complex story, right? And that's what's important for me as a researcher, and that's what's important to me as a Texan, as a human being. because this is my great-grandma, and that's my great-great-grandma holding me as I eat a tea cake. My great-great-grandma was born in 1877. So I got to experience, even though I don't remember, I got to experience someone from Reconstruction holding me. And that to me is a miracle. And that's the miracle that kind of keeps me going and pushes me on this path and animates what I do. And my great-grandma Hester is buried in that cemetery. And I would go and visit that cemetery every so often. It was down the street from where I live. Nobody knew the name of it. They didn't know what those initials stood for. This is about 12 years ago. And everybody, was on the phone, and I said, well, great-grandma has this FIS cemetery. What does that stand for? People didn't even remember what FIS stood for. What I'm sharing with you is this is a funeral program. How many have funeral programs in your house? Okay. This is what I learned from the funeral program. Besides, that's my, great-grandma, and she's buried at FIS Cemetery. What is FIS? Well, I found out that FIS is Farmers Improvement Society, and that's Robert Lloyd Smith, the founder. Anybody familiar with who Robert Lloyd Smith is? He's a very important person. Robert Lloyd Smith was a founder of Farmers Improvement Society, and he was a protege of Booker T. Washington. I didn't know all of this. This is from asking the question about a funeral program here. And I became obsessed with finding out what is this thing called Farmers Improvement. It had 21,000 members in 3 states. It was a powerful organization advocating for financial independence, land ownership, all because I looked at the funeral program. And I looked at what this name of this place was, and I asked questions. And I began to get so obsessed that I quit my job and went back to graduate school so I could do nothing but this. And I found this at University of Texas at Austin, where I got my degree. I found this little booklet. It's the only booklet left that was showing their bylaws and what they study and what they do. And so because I studied this, I actually found out about Freedom Colonies. So I didn't start with the Freedom Colony. I started with the funeral program in the cemetery and the association, and learned about this, and then I learned where the chapters were. And I learned about this book called Freedom Colonies by Sitton and Conrad that had a little information about this man in it. That helped, actually, he was the one in 1915 who created the Negro Extension Service. So, you know how Texas A&M has a cooperative extension service? You had this first. That's how important your materials and your story are, so we can get the truth out. And so that's what we do here at Texas Freedom Colonies Project. We connect and collect the stories of how places and institutions are created, and then we make sure that we remember where they are by getting them on a map and securing that information. When we say secure it, there's all types of ways that we get this information, and we collect it and we organize it, and we have it in our houses and under mattresses and in the back of the closet and at the top of the closet here and there. And heaven forbid something happen, disaster, flood, heat, all the things. And then you don't have a plan for what happens to them, and they are gone. And our memory of the place is gone that those materials told us about. And then we get to build all types of things on top of our communities. We get to run all types of roads through places that we don't have the names of, that nobody knows where they are anymore. And so what we do is we use all of this information and map all this information so that we can stand up confidently and develop research that helps people understand and see that not only did this place once exist, but there's people around who still care about these places. And we become part of the planning and the growth of Texas so that we're not forgotten and we have a voice. And so we want to make you visible. We want to address the vulnerability of these places and materials, and we want people to have access to this information. So that means we want to digitize your things for you and give it back to you. We want to support you in doing this work with Natira. So past the time we're here, Natira and you can continue doing this work. We want you to gather this data. We want to teach you how to do it. And we want to have a safe home for your material, secure and centralize all of it, and elevate your voices in the process. That's why we have this thing. This is a map in a database, and it's also what we call a visual history. It has the names of places in this community. It has the names of people who started organizations and cemeteries and important places. And you can look for places. This is all online and free. And most importantly, you can add directly to it. So it's not true because I say it's true. It's true because you all say it's true. This belongs to you. This is the map that is showing, and it's a little bright and it's a little difficult to see, but what you're seeing is not only the freedom colonies in Washington County, or some of them, but you're seeing these little blue lines everywhere, those dark blue lines that's sticking out everywhere. Those are transportation projects that are happening in the next 5 years. So if you're like, what is going on here? It could be a good thing, right? Or you could say, wait a minute, I didn't know that was happening. And so what we help you do is learn how you can access that information and have a say. So we do workshops and trainings and all of these wonderful things. And we record. So you see that there's recordings here today. The purpose of those recordings are to let people know and teach other people. And we make field guides. So if you look inside your folder, everyone should have a folder that we left on the chair, and if you don't, please raise your hand and we'll try to get you one. Inside of that folder is a booklet. It's called Saving Texas Freedom Colonies. Really handy if someone asks you, what are they? How do I find them? How do I get a hold of Dr. Roberts? What are they? That's your handy booklet about that, that we make available, and we have it on our website as well. So what have we learned? From doing this a few years, we have verified 416 of the places, that they exist, that they have a story, that there is some type of building that was there or is still there. And we're still getting input. 171 people have given us information, or rather we have 171 entries, and we have 67 entries where we need more research to verify it. And we've made some impact. We found them. We've increased markers, historic markers and designations of historic places to get them protective. People use our information. They use Freedom Colonies to validate what they're doing, to organize folks, to attract funding, to attract attention to what they're doing. So it's now a movement. You are a movement. Okay? Oh, and most importantly, that's my grandma Lily Bell in the middle. She used to go back to Independence Heights where her sisters are, Weetan and Bessie, who have left us too. And so this was all part of my life. And I bring that up not just to show off my pretty grandma, but to say it's right under your nose. And if you don't decide it's special, no one else will. And we're doing a museum collaboration with the Bullock Museum, which is the State Museum of Texas. So we'll be doing this workshop and more work in Austin. So we want to carry what you do here and tell them about oh, well, we in Brenham first, okay, this year. And let me tell you what we did in Brenham, okay? So we'll be in Austin, and we also have this website where we're collecting pictures of artifacts and information to put into our atlas. But I want to show you really quickly just an overview. So there's this region, y'all heard of the people say in the Brazos Valley, right? In the Brazos Valley, okay. So there are different ways that you can say or get recognized as historic, right? You hear people say, that's historic. What do you think we mean when we say historic? What is the definition of historic? Anybody can tell me.
Part of history.
Part of history, that's right. What else?
It's impactful. It makes an impact.
Makes an impact on folks, that's right. What else? Sometimes it's old. Sometimes it has to do with an important moment in history. At other times, it is because of the architect or the person who made the particular style or craftsman who made that building, right? So there's all these ways that we can define something as historic, and it's actually in the law. So it's not, I'm not making it up. But there's two that we look at: state historic markers and National Register historic places, rather the National Register of Historic Places. One is national recognition and one is state level. And the markers are great, and the national recognition is great. You get to qualify for certain funding and protections, but you really want districts. Historic districts are important, and we don't have nearly enough Black historic districts because that stops buildings from being torn down. Here in Washington County, you have 62 National Register listings. You have 175 state historic markers, and you have 18 partially or fully located freedom colonies. So you have 15 that we know of that we've been able to verify. And so this is a study that I did with a student over the past spring semester who did nothing but study Washington County this past spring. And what we found is that only 3 to 4% of those represent African American heritage. So let me break it down here. This is Washington County. You see those big numbers? Only 3% of them represent your story. So what have we been trying to do with Natera to do something about this? Let me hand it over. I'd like my colleague, Joshua, my team member, to come up and talk a little bit about what he's doing specifically to help people understand the history of Washington County. He's been charged with doing some more research. What kind of research have you been doing, Joshua?
Yes, so again, my name is Joshua, and honestly, this project has definitely kind of given me a new kind of perspective on what is really important and what is kind of history at the local level and kind of, what is around us, especially coming from an architecture background. I haven't really been able to dig into situations like these or stories like these, but through the Freedom Colonies Project, I have come across very profound and unique stories, and so I've been able to visit, for instance, Prairie View A&M that has a lot of archives, but they're just to give kind of even more background, people are even excited to share this information because nobody has ever to even look at these documents, these extension services, and so forth. And so I've gotten the opportunity to go to Prairie View A&M and to look at those archives, to even look at the archives on our campus at Texas A&M, to look at maps that were created through the Army Corps of Engineers that showcase these places, because if the newer the map, for instance, you don't see, you might not see, for instance, Walker Cemetery, you might not see Higger High School, because they don't see that, I guess, as important in the kind of current time. But as you go further back, it's like, no, this is very important and we should note it. And then also looking at our Cushing archives, to which even looking at Sanborn maps that talk about the kind of construction of these places and how they were built and so forth. And so it begins to tell even more background and even more story that for us and then for y'all to get that history out to other people and say, like, this is very important. So that's what I've definitely been able to come across this summer. So.
Awesome. And he's done an impressive job, and you're going to see some evidence of that job later on when we do our training. And so the idea is that you begin to see that in these archives and these big institutions are elements of your history. They're pictures, they're documents and names. And you can help us understand why a list of names is actually someone that may be someone who taught you in school, someone who was a leader of a lodge or a leader of a women's auxiliary, someone important in your community that shaped your life. And these materials and these stories show up in these big important places, right? And you should know where they are. So this is a list, and we're going to go back to this and see it on a map as well, but these are the places we know of, okay? These on the left are the Camptown, Flat Prairie, Grayball, all of these, we have some information about those. We have some information about Post Oak, Spain Settlement, and Welchersville, of course. But some of these others, Bluffs, Cross Hogs Branch, Mount Falls, Sawney Stand, these are ones that we're going to be asking you to help us give more information about, especially, though we want you to share anything about any of these places, and we're going to take you through some exercises to do that together. So just to reiterate, we need you. We need you. We need your oral histories, your memories, your capacity to talk to people, because we won't understand why the pictures matter if we don't know who's in them. And very often we get really cool information, but we need you to fill the gap in the historical record. This will ensure your community's voice is heard. And it helps us understand what's changed. It enriches our historical understanding of Washington County, and it builds a community knowledge base. And it makes the invisible visible. This is what you're going to do. I want to talk to you right away about something called consent, as it has to do with what we're doing here today. You might notice there are recorders on your tables. We have not turned those on yet until we explain very much in detail right now exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it. So there's different forms of information that we're going to ask you to share with us and give us permission to use. They're your likeness and image. That's just a picture of you. It is your sound, your talking. So if you're chatting and you say, I can't stand so-and-so at church, that's not the information we want from you. So no, just let me, assure you, the confines or the barriers of what we can actually use have to do with historic Black communities. All right, so anything that we gather or record here today and use for research purposes, that means put it in the atlas, put it in research papers, teach my students. All of that information in the form of your pictures, your sound recordings, and your video recordings that we're doing today, we'll be sharing with the museum, and we will be using for research purposes. So the other thing is we're throwing a lot of information at you, and we have note cards on the middle of every table. Someone please pick up a note card for me. Yeah, take a look at the note cards. Yeah, yes, exactly. Let me just do that. See these cards, these pretty cards back in front here? These are the ways you could say, hey, she was talking a lot, but I don't know, how do I get in contact with them? So this is, if you want to talk later, this on the back of these pretty note cards, we want you to take these home, and we'll give you some more if you want to give them to your family and friends. We have plenty with us, believe it, we have a lot. Take these, and on the back it has our email address. If you don't use email, we have a phone number. You call us on the phone and we'll try to get back with you within 48 hours. And we have our website, we have our Facebook page and our Instagram address here. And we have easy ways for you to share your information. If you want to share your story about a freedom colony, you can go to our website and share it there. And if you're like, I still don't know how to do it, then you can ask us. So when we talk about what oral history is, so what is oral history? Oral history is a big part of human culture, right? But it's a big part of African American culture because the griot who held the stories and the knowledge was the equivalent of a senator in West African culture. So it wasn't just, oh, they know the history, it was they're the wisest person because they know the history. So it is sacred to us, it is part of who we are, and it's our strength and also a challenge because we know that if we don't record things, we lose them. So, as we mentioned before, there's two types. We think about life review. Can somebody tell me, what they think a life review is when you think of oral history? Life review.
Something about your life.
Yeah, something about your life. It's something that's about everybody's life. Like everybody went to school. Everybody had a first day of school. Everybody went to let's say toward the Bluebell factory, or something that everybody did, right? Something very big and broad, but those take a long time. So life review is when you ask people all these memories and that portray their life events and experiences, and they bring attention to a person whose life illustrates the experiences and history of others. So these are wonderful, but they often take 2-3 hours at a time, multiple visits, and we encourage you to do those, but we're training you today for something called topic interviews so we can get really specific. So you might do a topic interview. That means you look for people who could tell you about, let's say, Texas music, for example. Maybe you do all Texas musicians. Maybe you do all Black fraternities or sororities. Maybe you do particular oral histories about a particular racial conflict that happened. Or, in this case, life, African American life in Washington County, and especially the Brenham area. Okay? So if you're doing oral history, these are the ways that you prepare. You have to prepare materials. You have to research. So that's what we did today. We said, we're not going to come in and say, okay, give us stuff. I took time to understand, my team took time to learn a little bit about the work that Natera had already been doing for a few years in your community to safeguard your materials and tell your history. We make sure we explain consent and we're ethical. You make sure you explain what you're doing. If you sit down with an elder and talk to them, I don't care if it's your sister, your grandma, you are still ethically required to explain what's going to happen with that. I'm going to record it and I'm going to take it to Natera. I'm going to record it and I'm going to go to the library. But have a plan and have your materials, that's note-taking material and equipment, and we'll talk a little about that later. And you're going to schedule, right? You're going to say what's the best time, and you're going to have your questions ready. Research is going to help you focus when you ask questions. It's going to help you not to ask things like that you just talked about 5 minutes ago to that person. You're going to, well, I did a little, research here. I'm not going to talk about a school in Houston to someone from this county if I knew that they went to school here. Just a little research. And you're going to place it in historical context. So maybe someone went to elementary school right during integration or before integration, right? And you want to create informed questions. And you got to find the right place in the right time, right? This is, you don't want this. You want some of that, right? In a certain part of the day, right? No, don't come by my house after 9. Don't ring my doorbell after 10. So you got to be really aware of what's okay for folks. And so for materials, you want a list of topics to guide questioning. It's not always about writing a lot of questions. It's about what topics do I want to cover, right? I want to make sure I talk about teachers. If I talk about the school, I want to talk about when did it close? When did it open? What was prom like? Did you have a dance? What did you do socially? Have those topics. Have a notepad, a pen or pencil, have a watch, so you're kind of looking at the time. Have your consent form, we'll show you that in a moment, and have your recorder and extra batteries for that recorder. If that's the kind of recorder you have, make sure you have it. And then have a cell phone and your cell phone charger. And we'll have a few tools we can show you for how to use your cell phone to talk to and record folks. How to write interview questions. Get the facts, get the stories, get the images and flavors, get the beliefs and ideas, and connect to a larger history of place events and use photos. That's what we're going to teach you today, is how you don't just depend on your talking, but how you can use your photos and documents to get people excited about talking and to help them remember things. So when we say get the facts, what do you think I'm talking about? When were you born? Those kind of baseline facts. When did you move here? And then get the stories. That means tell us a story about, the first time you went into a store with your mother in downtown Brenham? I heard giggling, that's good. That's a good topic, isn't it? Get the images and the flavors. What did it smell like when your mom made or your dad made a certain food? What did they make? Get the beliefs and ideas, right? What is it that people believe about what it was like to grow up, where they grew up? What did they believe about their school? It was all black, and we had teachers that taught us foreign languages, and we didn't feel like we lacked a thing. Might be a thing that you hear about going to an all-black school, for example. You want to use open-ended questions and be a good listener. Get them talking, give them information to build on. So it's not about having a long, detailed question. It's about a topic, and it's about conversation, right? And it's about straightforward questions in a familiar language. Meaning, if you're talking to your sister or your grandma, and you suddenly start using vocabulary that's different, it's like, oh, is this because it's oral history? Well, why is this happening? Why is she being weird? You know, just use your same everyday language and avoid leading questions such as, how much did you hate going to school with white people all of a sudden? That may not have been the case at all. It might have just been, okay, I just knew that suddenly we were going to this school and I adapted and I did really well. So you want to leave everything open to whatever someone has to tell you about the experience. Encourage free and candid questions and responses. Check your facts. Let the narrator shape the interview, but you have to retain control. And what that means is they could go all off on some really cool stories, but maybe that's for another visit. It's all important. You just may have to get yourself ready for another visit. We talked about consent, and I want you to look at your folders. And consent means explaining to your interviewees, we talked about this before, what's the project purpose, the process, your plans for the oral histories, what happens to them. And inside your folder, I need a folder. Here we go. It says oral history informed consent form. Say that 3 times fast. And so these 2 pieces of paper are handy. You don't have to do anything with them today, but they give you a way to, you can make a copy of this. If you're using it when you're talking to someone, you're like, I don't know what she's talking about, this consent stuff. What kind of language do we use? Here's a sample that you can use, okay? And you also have in here tips on how to interview. So if I'm going too fast or you didn't take all the notes, you have your own little tip sheet, your handy tip sheet before you get started with your interviews. And the other thing you have is an introduction to oral history from Baylor University's Oral History Center. This is used by people around the country, by the way. I've been to an international oral history conference, and Baylor's program is a big deal in this booklet. So it's a really handy guide. This is also available online, but I wanted everybody to have their own copy so that this is a real handy, it tells you how to ask questions, all the things that I'm going over today. So I wanted to make sure you knew these resources were here. But consent is, again, about respect. It's about encouraging people to speak in their own language and not arguing, and only making promises you can fulfill. That's a hard one for me, by the way, because I often commit to people to do a lot of things, or I used to, when I first started this work. And you keep very, very focused on the task at hand in which you can reasonably promise. And so I know I've thrown all of that at you really fast, but we're going to practice. We want you to practice this script with someone and ask, what can you tell me about black settlements or freedom colonies in Washington County? You can write down your answer on, we should have white note paper or notes, for them to just, this is practice, and we'll pick those up later. And what you're going to do is turn to the person next to you and practice. And then what you're going to do is practice this script and practice this question. But this is an important, you need to do this anytime you start recording someone. You don't say, okay, this is so-and-so, and I'm recording. This is the difference between having something people can use at an archive and not. Okay? So there's no pressure with this. This is practice. But every time you do your oral history interviews today, you're going to do this. So let's go ahead and get started. And we'll walk around and support you. Okay, so now we're going to work with pictures. Okay, we created some copies that we'll bring to your table if you can't see some of these pictures, but we want to do some practicing with pictures, and we have a form. So let me go into the folder and guide you through how we're going to do this. So this packet, it says oral history exercise form on the top of it. So let's make sure they know, yes ma'am, oral history exercise form. All right, so have this ready. We don't have to use it right away, but I want you to be ready when I ask you to fill these out when interviewing people. You'll notice at the top it has a practice question. It has the practice interview question about freedom colonies, so you could add some more on there about that if you'd like to. We just ask for your initial and your age, and if you are in any way a Brenham resident or, an addition resident, and the name of your addition needs to be placed up here on the top, okay? So we're talking about these places, and so many of you have mentioned them already, which is exciting. We talked about Camptown, and we talked about, what else? Any of these up here ring a bell? If you could, Rochesville, what else? Camptown, Post Oak. We're going to start with this first, practice all together, and then you're going to practice separately with some others. So how many of you, or any of you, familiar with Old Gay Hill Church? Oh, this is so perfect. Actually, we're going to do this one. Okay. You have your form, and the purpose of the form is to practice every time you do this. We need you to practice that same, this is blank, today is the day it is. And we want you, where it says image number 1, to write Old Gay Hill Church. And then what you will do is you will practice interviewing each other and make sure you're writing your notes for yours. But I want you to practice interviewing each other. And so what you're going to do is answer each of these questions, which are already on your form. They may be slightly differently worded, but they're these questions. Do you recognize the names and or locations mentioned? So it's, do you know anything about Old Gay Hill? Have you or a relative participated in this program, event, or organization? Tell us about that. Do you have a social connection or family relationship with the place or people mentioned in this image or document? Share that. So that's what your 3 questions are. So you need to turn to your partner, do your preamble, and then ask the person across from you these questions and take the notes. What we'll do is I'm going to skip ahead and I'm going to try out one of these last few that have to do with what we talked about before, was the Negro Extension Service. So all of this, the next things we're going to do are artifacts from PV about their extension service. But all of this exciting history, and I published an article on this, could be your history too, and it's article worthy. And so our team has done research and went to PV and found out about 4-H Club, Cooperative Extension, used to do home demonstration. Does anybody remember a home demonstration? Raise your hand.
I was in 4-H.
You were in 4-H? Fantastic. Anybody remember a demonstration program? Everybody, you remember it?
Yes.
You remember people doing it,
Yes.
teaching it?
Yes.
That's incredible. That's awesome. So Does anybody know these women? Any of these women at all? We have Mary Lee, Clara Colbert, and Darlene Howard. They're 4-H club girls. Yep, you do? Oh. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. I would like, we're gonna do one more demonstration. And do both of you women know these people? No, just one of you. You do, ma'am? Your name, I'm sorry.
Loretta Johnson. I know Darlene.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Johnson. And you said you know, who was a 4-H person? You were, okay.
Yeah, I was elementary, junior high,
Okay.
way back in the day.
Oh, that's wonderful. That means that's why these pictures mean something. So if I could get, if you don't mind, you two women are gonna be our next practice. Okay. So we do, first, I would like you to, Mrs. Mays, if you could interview Ms. Johnson.
Okay.
So if you could start with the script and then do the question, the
Okay.
questions.
My name is Cheryl Mays, and today is September the 5th, 2021, and I'm interviewing Ms. Johnson at 3:50 p.m. And the interview is taking place at the bus depot in Brenham, Texas. And this interview is part of the Black Heritage Museum project. And I guess used for the Freedom Project Museum exhibit. Okay. What can you tell me about these ladies in the picture here, or about the organization 4-H? Do you know any of those ladies on the
Yes,
photo?
yes.
Okay, which one do you know?
A little louder, please, I'm sorry.
Which one do you know?
Darlene Howard.
Okay, can you possibly tell me something about Ms. Howard?
Darlene Howard went to Prairie View. She went to school here in Washington County, and then she went to Prairie View, and then she came back and became a teacher here in Brenham.
Oh, okay. Do you know do you have any relatives that participated in it other than Ms. Howard that you just know from being in the program? Any events or organizations or anything?
No.
Okay, and do you have any kind of social connection or family relationship to Ms. Howard, or you just know her?
Well,
How do you know her?
Later years, I worked with her, and I was also a teacher at the same school,
Oh, okay. And what was the name of that school again?
Alton Elementary.
Oh, okay. I was a student there.
Okay.
And what year is that?
I don't know.
I was there first grade over off of West First and Second Street. That's where they had the first Alton Elementary.
Oh, okay.
And then we moved to the one over where Pickett High School was.
Right.
And I was there in second and third grade.
Okay.
Okay. And so, all right, that's it.
Yay! I was sucked in. I don't know about y'all, but I was like, tell me more. Yes. So follow-up, the thesis is, as Natalie was saying, follow-up questions, super important. As you're hearing things and you wonder, keep asking the questions. The other important thing here, super important, is listening and, really going, oh, well, that resonates with me. I can add to that. So they begin to have a real conversation. That's what you want. That's good. Okay? So as you can see, this is some seemingly random picture, right? But we just learned about a school. We learned about, it was in 2 different places. We learned a lot. And we learned this, one of these women grew up to be a teacher that taught someone here, or worked with someone here, which is exciting to me. So because I don't want to run over our time, but I'm going to make these available at another time for you to continue doing this, Natira. And we could do this with schools. You could see we could do this. But I want to get to what it is to stay involved with this project and really stress that. And then I'll talk to you a little bit about some resources. How do you keep being a part of this exhibit and growing the exhibit and with Texas Freedom Colonies Project? You can call us, you can visit our website. You can complete, we had survey forms. Did you put the survey forms? Or where's Valentina?
We don't have survey forms in the folders or in the USBs.
They're on the USBs, okay. So we have USBs over here. We're gonna give them to you regardless whether or not you scan, because they have material on them. So everything here, we put it on the little USB, which is a storage drive, and everyone here can have one. So if you're like, well, I want to print this off later, the drives have all this that's in the folder on there, okay? And then you can learn from that and go to our atlas, which is just the map online, and we have a form on there you can fill out to talk about your edition I learned today. Talk about your edition. So these are all different free applications for people who are like, what are you talking about? What is an app? So there's all these different little symbols that show up on your phone. There's all these little individual pictures. Each one of those is what's called an app. You have an app store on your phone. So it's a blue A if you have an iPhone. On that app store, you simply search for one of these apps. And I'm recommending there's two types of apps that you want. You want one app that helps you record sound, like you want, to hear. And you want another app that scans. Something that's recording my interview, something that's scanning documents. I talk to you, you have a document, I'm asking you questions about it, I record that as well. Google Voice, easy thing to use to record text. StoryCorps, has anybody heard StoryCorps on National Public Radio? Yes, they have an app where you can record oral histories. It is free. All of these you can Google, or you can also look them up on the App Store. There's one called PhotoMine, TurboScan. It's a little app that can scan. So someone has a picture. Sometimes if you just take a picture of a picture, it doesn't really come out that good. So scanning, if you get the right photo scan by Google or TurboScan, I use Tiny Scanner, but that has a monthly fee. It's not that much, or not a monthly fee, it's you do have to pay for it, but it's pretty inexpensive, and I like Tiny Scanner. Office Lens by Microsoft, No Notes and Tiny Scanner costs money. And I'm not promoting them or saying that I'm going to make any money by telling you about them, but No Notes allows you to record phone calls. And Tiny Scanner, again, is where I get my phone and you show me a document and I can take and scan of it into a PDF, or I could take a photo of it as color or in black and white. And this is a cool tool. It's called PicStory. PicStory allows you to both record the oral history and take the picture of the person that you're taking the oral history of. So I could take a picture of Miss Mays, and then I'm recording Miss Mays, and I could email that to freedomcoloniesproject@gmail.com, for example. Or I could share it with Natira directly. And just remember how important this is. I'm going to leave time now for your questions, because we're all right at 4 o'clock. But remember that your archives and your voice is what keeps your heritage alive. We want to come back in this community and talk to you about, in the future, succession and disaster preparedness plans for your heritage materials. Where is it going to be? What are you going to do with it? Okay, and at the same time, we'll have discussions with you about your overall preparedness. And that's something we want to do way in the future, but we think it's important to support you in protecting your heritage in that way. And your community really depends on you. Okay? This is not just, oh, this is a fun thing to do on a Sunday. Like, you're really crucial to the future of the African American exhibit that's going to be in that huge museum. So this is all part of that. We're really, really grateful everything that we heard today is helping us with that work. But I really want to thank you, and I'm going to hand it over to Tira to kind of close us out.
Sure.
But I will be over here at this table, and I'm happy to keep talking and give you material. But here's Natira.
Okay. So a few different thank yous. Yes. Thank you, Dr. Roberts. Now, normally in an event, we say, sit back and relax and enjoy the event. I'm going to ask you all to do the opposite today. It's not sit back and relax and enjoy. It is please jump in and help us tell our stories. Okay, so I'm looking for everyone to please come see myself or Cheryl to let us know whether you'd like to be an interviewer. Maybe you're not from here and you want to go interview some folks in our community, or you'd like to be an interviewee. You know some of those stories and you'd like to share them so that, you know, we can continue to tell those stories. Or as Dr. Roberts said, bring your materials for us to scan as well. So please don't sit back, jump in, okay? We need your involvement, we need your engagement, and the African American content in the museum will only be as good as you make it. So we're literally counting on you to help us ensure that our African American contributions for Washington County are appropriately represented in that museum. And I do not want someone else to make up or decide what content goes in there relative to African Americans in Washington County because we didn't give enough information. So it's really, really critical that we do that. Again, this is not just a one-day thing. Please reach out to anybody that you see that's here working with the museum, myself, Cheryl, Janelle Jefferson, Sarita Curington. There's many other people that are all a part of this team. So please reach out, raise your hand, give us a call. We'd love to hear from you and find out how you want to get engaged.